He grabbed the evidence from her hand in front of the entire city. But what happened next destroyed everything he thought he controlled. Before we step into this story, let me tell you something real. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone powerful tried to shrink you, if you've ever been told to know your place, then tonight's story is going to sit heavy in the best way. If stories about courage, dignity, and quiet strength mean something to you, then stay close to this one. Because some moments don't just expose corruption, they expose character. But before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and which part of the story hit you the hardest. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Now, let's get back to the story. The chandelier light reflected off crystal glasses as donors laughed under the Alabama night sky. Bourbon swirled. Cameras flashed. Hildreth Foundation banners lined the ballroom walls. Jeffrey A. Hildreth stood near the orchestra, smiling the polished smile that had built a billion-dollar empire. Then the doors opened, and Joyce S. Brown walked in, royal blue gown. Head high, not trembling, not asking permission. 5 years earlier, she had been escorted out of the Blue Water Grill after Jeffrey dismissed her in front of investors. Ambitious beyond her qualifications, he had said. Tonight, she didn't look ambitious. She looked inevitable. Jeffrey froze. He crossed the room quickly, smile tight, jaw clenched. "Joyce," he said, gripping her wrist just a little too firmly. "You don't belong here." She didn't blink. "Oh," she replied calmly, holding up the red and black flash drive between them. "I belong here more than you think." And that's when he tried to take back control. But to understand why that moment mattered, understand why a billionaire would panic at the sight of a single flash drive, you have to go back to a restaurant by the Chattahoochee River, back to a night at the Blue Water Grill, where Humiliation planted the seed of something Jeffrey A. Hildreth never saw coming. The Blue Water Grill was the kind of place where polished silverware caught the sunset, and politicians pretended they'd pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Joyce S. Brown ran the floor like a quiet commander, hospitality manager, calm, efficient, the kind of woman who remembered your drink before you asked for it. That's where Jeffrey first leaned in close behind the scenes. Private compliments, lingering glances, promises about opportunity. But when Samuel and Gerald started whispering near the bar, "He's getting serious with staff?" Jeffrey's warmth cooled. That night was supposed to be different. Joyce had prepared a proposal for the Hildreth Foundation. Ethical housing contracts that would bring real development to struggling neighborhoods in Phoenix City. She wore a navy blazer. She believed in the numbers. In front of donors, she stepped forward. "Mr. Hildreth, if I could just—" Jeffrey didn't even let her finish. "Joyce," he said smoothly, loud enough for the room to hear, "you're confusing enthusiasm with expertise. You're a bit ambitious beyond your qualifications." A pause, then laughter. Samuel smirked. Gerald sipped bourbon. Someone muttered, "Know your place." And just like that, the floor manager was escorted off her own floor. The next morning, her position was eliminated. That night, Joyce didn't scream. She didn't beg. She sat in her small apartment, overlooking the river, and let the silence do its work. Then she opened her laptop. Licensing courses, municipal codes, contract law, ethics compliance. If you've ever been told you were too small, too bold, too much, then you understand what it feels like to sit alone in the dark and decide whether you'll shrink or rise. And if you know that feeling, then you already know why stories like this matter. Joyce chose to rise. In Phoenix City, the name Josh P. Hildreth carried weight. People still told stories about how he started with one dump truck and a borrowed loan, building roads and warehouses along the Alabama-Georgia line. He sponsored Little League teams, funded church renovations, shook hands like a man who remembered every calloused palm he once had. Shorter Mansion stood as proof of that climb. White columns, iron gates, a symbol of what grit could become. When Josh passed, The empire didn't shrink. It expanded. Jeffrey A. Hildreth inherited more than wealth. He inherited contracts, city redevelopment projects, waterfront expansions, emergency housing grants. Political endorsements followed him like loyal shadows. Donors trusted him because they trusted his father's name. Permits moved quickly when Jeffrey asked. Funding approvals rarely stalled. And standing at the edge of it all was Police Chief Sarah Davidson. Steady, respected, known for being by the book. She wasn't a woman who bent easily. In town meetings, her voice carried authority. She believed in process, in paperwork, in the law. But even the most respected systems can be manipulated quietly. Emergency housing funds meant for struggling families. Municipal overrides signed during urgent development windows. Transfers routed through consulting intermediaries. Offshore partnerships buried beneath layers of legitimacy. Jeffrey believed he controlled it all. The city, the narrative, even Joyce. He thought her humiliation had closed that chapter. He didn't know that while he was cutting ribbons and posing for cameras, Joyce S. Brown had been studying zoning codes, attending municipal hearings, documenting patterns. Quietly, patiently, while he inherited power, she built precision. And when power forgets to look over its shoulder, it often misses who's watching. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Cream cardstock, embossed gold lettering. Josh P. Hildreth Memorial Gala, Shorter Mansion. Inside, a handwritten note in familiar ink. Hope life's been kind to you, Jeffrey. Joyce stared at it longer than she expected. It wasn't an olive branch. It was bait, a reminder, a test, a performance. He wanted to see if she still flinched. She didn't. Her decision was a revenge. It was truth. Over the next week, her preparation was deliberate, not dramatic, not emotional. The royal blue gown hung against her bedroom door, elegant, structured, unapologetic. She tried it on once. No hesitation. In the mirror, the flash drive rested in her palm, red and black. Light, ordinary looking, heavy with consequence. But she didn't rely on one device. Encrypted backups were already scheduled. Timed releases. Remote uploads. She wasn't walking into Shorter Mansion hoping to win. She was walking in prepared. There's a particular strength in returning to the place that tried to dismiss you. In the South, rooms remember hierarchy. They remember who was told to wait outside. They remember who was escorted out politely. But they also remember who walks back in without asking permission. The night of the gala, a black sedan pulled through the iron gates. Music floated across the lawn. Camera flashes shimmered near the entrance. Joyce exhaled once. The driver opened the door, and she stepped out onto the gravel drive of Shorter Mansion. Not as staff, not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who carried the truth. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. A jazz trio played near the staircase. Donors laughed over bourbon and polite politics. Jeffrey saw her before she reached the center of the ballroom. His smile faltered just slightly. He crossed the room with measured urgency. "Joyce," he said, voice smooth but tight. "Didn't expect you." She held the red and black flash drive loosely between her fingers. "I'm sure you didn't." His eyes dropped to it. Recognition flickered, then something sharper. In one swift motion, he grabbed her wrist. The drive caught between their hands, their faces inches apart. "You have no idea what you're doing," he whispered. Her grip tightened. Steady, unshaken. "I know exactly what I'm doing." Samuel and Gerald moved closer. Guests began to notice. Conversation slowed. The tension under the chandeliers felt electric. Two forces locked in silent battle. Some moments test who you really are. Not when you're winning, but when someone stronger tries to silence you. And if you believe truth should never bow to power, then you understand why she didn't let go. Behind them, the large presentation screen near the orchestra flickered. Once, twice, then emails filled the screen. Transfers, Permits. Signatures. The room went quiet. Jeffrey loosened his grip. Too late. The screen glowed against marble walls. Forged development permits. Offshore routing accounts. Emergency housing funds diverted through layered shell contracts. And one signature, repeating again and again. Jeffrey A. Hildreth. A low murmur spread across the ballroom. Joe and Wendy, neighbors for years, stared at the screen as if it were rewriting history. Police Chief Sarah Davidson stepped forward, calm as ever. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. Jeffrey, she said evenly, care to explain these municipal overrides tied to emergency housing funds? The weight of her tone carried more force than anger ever could. Joyce faced the room. Not him. Your father built the city on integrity, she said clearly. You hid behind his name while stealing from the community that trusted you. That hit harder than any financial figure. Josh P. Hildreth's name was sacred in Phoenix City, and now it trembled. Phones lifted discreetly. Donors stepped back, not dramatically, but intentionally. Jeffrey opened his mouth. No sound came. For the first time in years, he didn't control the room. Samuel shifted first, a subtle step backward. Gerald avoided eye contact entirely. Political donors whispered in tight circles. Glasses lowered. Shoulders turned away. Jeffrey attempted composure. This is a misunderstanding, he began, voice strained. Manipulated data. But no one echoed him. Chief Sarah Davidson gave a quiet nod to two detectives standing near the entrance. Jeffrey's eyes darted. You're ruining everything, he snapped at Joyce. She didn't raise her voice. No, she said. I'm correcting it. Security edged closer. The once grand ballroom felt smaller now, its white walls less majestic, more exposed. Shorter mansion, built as a monument to legacy, suddenly felt like a stage stripped of illusion. The man who believed himself untouchable stood alone, beneath crystal light, and isolation is louder than accusation. Chief Sarah Davidson's voice carried clearly across the silence. Jeffrey A. Hildreth, you're under formal investigation for financial misconduct and obstruction. Gasps rippled outward. Donors stepped back physically now, distance made visible. Jeffrey leaned toward Joyce, voice low. You could have come to me. Her answer was steady. I did. Years ago. Security positioned themselves at his side. Outside, cameras flashed as word traveled faster than denial ever could. News vans gathered at the iron gates. Jeffrey walked toward the entrance, not as host, not as heir, but as a man losing ground. The massive doors of Shorter Mansion closed behind him. Inside, the silence lingered. Power had just walked out. The chandeliers still glowed. The jazz trio had stopped playing. Joyce stood alone in the center of the ballroom, not smiling, not celebrating, just breathing. Police Chief Sarah Davidson gave her a small nod, professional respect. Joe and Wendy approached quietly. We should have spoken up sooner, Wendy admitted. Joyce didn't scold them. Accountability in small towns is slow but meaningful. Phoenix City wasn't perfect. No place is. But community memory runs deep along the Chattahoochee River. People remember who builds and who betrays. Joyce walked toward the doors. Outside, the Alabama night felt warm and steady. Stars stretched above the river like quiet witnesses. If you ever stood in a room where someone tried to shrink you and you chose not to fold, then you know what tonight really meant. And if stories about courage, dignity, and truth speak to you, then carry this one with you. Because sometimes the only thing stronger than money is a woman who refuses to be small. Joyce stepped beyond the gates of Shorter Mansion. He tried to take back control. But the second he grabbed the truth, he lost everything he thought he owned. That if you love this story, don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from and which part of the story hit you the hardest. We've got more powerful, emotional stories coming your way. And trust me, you don't want to miss them.